In this video we are going to try and unpack the truth about speedrunning in GTA Online. But before I do, let's just get started with this actual speedrun. Obviously I'm using the Cayo Perico heist as the base for the speedrun, and we're starting from over here at Lago Zancura. You're going to have to forgive my pronunciation throughout this video. So all I've done in preparation is move the sub to the beach opposite where the vellum will spawn. Then I started the mission up, and every time I didn't get the Lago Zancura prep mission, I've just flown off, destroyed the vellum, gone back to the sub and restarted. Now you can change session, you can cancel the mission, but for this, what I decided to do, partly because I'm tight,
Speaking of cheapskates,
in fact, you know what, mainly because I'm tight, I decided to just go and destroy the vellum anyway. So, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Why are there so many timers on screen? And why is there a second piece of video up there? Well, I'll go through all that as we fly down to Cayo Perico. So I'm sure most of you have done this before, and I'm sure most of you are quite familiar with speedrunning. A lot of you will have seen the work that people like Dark Viper do, and at times, do you know what? It boggles my mind. When you look into the effort that goes into speedrunning, it's really hard work. So, a couple of months ago, when the YouTuber you'll see in the top right of this screen, Pubarama, posted a couple of videos about glitchless speedruns, I was kind of interested in that. And that's because with a glitchless speedrun, you don't have all the same setup requirements that you do for some of the world record holding speedruns. Now, we will come back to some of the specifics later on, but it's things like job warping and spawn prevention, all of which when it's built together can give you an incredibly quick time for the actual mission, but there can be hours and hours and hours of prep work in there. So that kind of limits it. It means you can only speedrun if you can dedicate 3-4 hours to actually putting a mission together in order to get a 20-minute end mission time. And a lot of people can't do that. So when Pubarama posted his videos about glitchless speedrunning, I was really interested because this is something that's available to everyone. This is a type of speedrunning where you just start the mission. I mean, admittedly, both I and he did put some effort into making sure that the initial spawn point was preferable, but other than that, there was no other prep for the missions. We just took it as it came and played it as fast as we could. And as you can already see, he's already playing it significantly faster than me. But I'm going to give him this one. We'll say this is 1-0. I'm going to give him this one because based on watching his video, I know I'm a speedrunning genius. I know I'm going to make this time up on some of the areas where I know for a fact, I know deep in my heart, that I can do this faster. Yeah, let's see how that works out. So we've flown over to Cayo Perico, and the tip there is to take your time getting up to just over 900 feet. I think between 900 and 1,000 feet the plane flies a little bit faster, so you don't get any benefit for going above 1,000 feet, but the speed doesn't drop that much if you drop below 1,000 feet, so you don't want to go too high, but you also don't want to stay low. And Pubarama clearly did a better job of that on account of the fact that he was 28 seconds faster. But let's not get bogged down with who was faster than who, because this is the bit that really convinced me to have a go, because I was absolutely convinced that my route to the communications tower was faster than the one that he took. So I've put them on side by side, and now's a good time to talk through the timers. So in the top right, whenever I'm doing a direct comparison, I'll put Pubarama's clip in there with his time. The shorter timer on the top at the bottom is my time for the current section, and the time right at the very bottom is the total time for the speed run so far. And there are a couple of notes on how I've chosen when to start and stop the timing, because on Pubarama's run he did have a few technical issues. So what I've tried to do is focus on the bits where we're doing a comparable part, because obviously what I want to do here is prove that I'm a speedrunning genius. And it's looking like it might be 2-0, I'll give you that. It's looking like it might be 2-0, because already as we go over here, the kind of time to the jump, where he did the jump slightly different to me, was relatively similar, but since then he's way ahead, and he actually, looking at it, he's already at the tower and I'm just about to come up. So let's just see what the difference is here. He did a 117 and I've done a 128, so 11 seconds, which is kind of worrying, because this is the one point where I knew for a fact, as I said before, deep in my heart, that my route was faster.
Poor deluded man.
Back to what we're doing. I'll give some tips on the whole approach to Cayo Perico, but obviously this isn't a full guide. I do have full guides on the channel. One of them's quite old now, but I'll pop a link up here, and if you want to have a look at that, you can do it. It's definitely still relevant. A couple of things we're doing differently with this one. So obviously I'm not scoping any of the secondary targets. Normally I would always do the secondary targets, but this one, because for the finale I just want to be in, get the primary target and out, I'm just going to do the primary target and that's it. So quickest way out of here, it really depends. Usually I don't do a session swap, as you'll see later on, because my broadband connection where I live is absolutely dog shit. It can take 15 to 20 seconds for me to change lobbies. So what I tend to do is kill myself and fly back. But for this, I thought I'll go for the session change, and that really worked. And one thing that I also neglected to mention is on the flight down to Cayo, as you pass over the base, well, should I say the Merryweather base right at the bottom of the map, I always call my Casaca in from there, because I have a very specific order that I do the preps in, and I always do the weapon prep first. And by calling the Casaca in from there, it means your Casaca's in the right place to deal with the Merryweather heist if it happens. Now luckily for me, it hasn't happened this time, so this should be another area where I should pull out loads of time on Pubaram, because as you can see from his clip, when he started it, he got the Merryweather HQ prep, which no one wants because it just takes a ridiculous amount of time and is incredibly boring. So there are a couple of ways to deal with that. You can either swap session, or if you're like me and your broadband connection is rubbish, you can fire up the cruise missiles and shoot the helicopter off the top of the Merryweather off the top of the Merryweather HQ. What that will do is that will fail the mission, and when you restart it again, you've got a good chance of getting another. Now sometimes you might have to do that 2 or 3 times, but because my connection isn't brilliant, I find that faster than switching sessions. Some of you may find it easier to switch sessions, but notwithstanding that, I've already now, on this section, finally got a bit of a lead. And also, this is where it starts to hurt a little bit, because as you'll see as I go through this, I can't blame RNG for any of the issues with my run, because I got the best RNG. I got the 707 Vespucci for the weapons mission, which is basically the best one to get because it's the easiest place to land the helicopter. Now, this is another point where I thought the way I do this is definitely faster, because what I tend to do is I fire up the minigun and just single headshot a handful of guards, and what I would say is 8 times out of 10 this works perfectly, and every now and then it just doesn't, and I haven't quite figured out why it sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, but it does work most of the time. So doing it this way, I can just sneak through, headshot a few people. I don't need to get into a massive fight, I don't need to kill everyone, I can just kill the people that are important, and then I can get on with my day. I think what actually happened there watching the video is I probably ran a bit too far into the room and spooked some of the guys, so I ended up having to kill them all anyway. So by the time I get to the safe after killing everyone, he's almost caught up. So that's about a 20-second lead that I had that has just been absolutely wiped out. Brilliant. And then we go into my least favourite minigame in the entire game. I hate that thing. I think I did quite well there. That's really good for me. Normally it takes me a lot longer. I hate that game. I can just never see the numbers. But I'm still slightly ahead, but not enough to claw anything back. This is going to be a bit of a theme as we go through, because it's very easy as a relatively casual player to look at what speedrunners do and see tiny little improvements that you can make, but not recognise the huge areas where they're making up masses and masses of time, which is what actually happened when I compared these two runs. Now, the reason I've stopped the timer already is because this is where my run fell apart a little bit, because what you can't see here is that my interaction menu decided to stop working. That's why I keep flicking between the normal view and all the other various views. For some reason on this session I could not get my interaction menu to pop up, because what I would normally do is I would leave the weapons prep, head straight over to Vespucci Beach, and at some point over there open the interaction menu, call my Kasatka, land there, job's a good one, loads of time saved. But obviously now, for some reason, and I can honestly say I've never had this before, and I recorded this footage about a month ago and I've never had it since. For some reason on this session my interaction menu just would not open. So I had to write down to the bottom of the map and just hope that it would be sorted for the next prep. So I said I'd talk about some of the glitches, and one of the ones that people use for this is preventing spawns that you don't want. So for example, for this you don't want the Merryweather HQ prep. You also don't want to miss the entrance to the submarine, but that's a different matter. And the way you can prevent the Merryweather HQ prep from spawning is by using your interaction menu for your Kasatka to call in dinghies. You then use a cargo bob to pick up each of those dinghies, drop it in a place that some of the support vehicles for each of the prep missions will appear, and then destroy them. Because if there is an object in a place where a vehicle needs to spawn in order to start a mission, then the mission can't start. And that's because this is an online multiplayer game, and it needs to make sure, well, in theory it needs to make sure that it doesn't spawn something on another player's head. But if you look at the way things are when you're driving around these days, they don't seem to be that worried about not spawning things on your head, but that's a totally different thing. Now that process takes quite a while. If you imagine, if there are 17 of these roughly that you need to do to prevent all of the setup missions that you don't want, let's say each one takes 4 minutes to do, which seems reasonable to spawn a dinghy, pick it up, drop it off, blow it up, get back in your helicopter and get to the next location. That's an hour and 20 minutes of just blowing up dinghies. So anyway, we're on our way to do the fingerprint cloner. Now one thing you may notice is our timers go a little bit out of sync here, and this is something we'll come back to later as well. Because not only did Pubarama do better on the actual missions than I did, his ordering also seemed to make a reasonable amount of difference. So I have a very specific order that I do them in, and his order was slightly different. So what I did is I chopped his video up to just get the comparable sections so that I could show the performance of myself in each section against someone who actually knows what they're doing, and show you the differences between a reasonably good run, which I still think mine was, and a really, really good run. So what we're doing here, we're just going to head into the Warehouse. Now, one thing that I would normally do, and this is for time but in a different way, is depending on which warehouse you get, there are 3 warehouses, and on 2 of them it actually makes sense to go and turn the power off. It does take you a little bit of time to go and flick the switch, but if you do flick the switch, then you get an awful lot less dialogue when you're actually inside the warehouse. So for these 2, it does make sense. So let's just flick this and head on inside and shoot some fools. So this is a fairly easy prep. I can put some of this down to my interaction menu failing, but not all of it, unfortunately. And that's why the nature of this video changed. This was originally supposed to be me showcasing my brilliance, but it turned out to be me showcasing my averageness. Now this is one of the other areas that I wanted to change, because for these missions Purama stays in the Sparrow. Now I was utterly convinced that it is faster, and it may well be if you do it properly and if your interaction menu works. What I wanted to do is call my oppressor in after I'd done the first one, which is why I always do the fingerprint cloner first, because that way I can fly to the first warehouse in my Sparrow, call the oppressor in while I'm on my way into the warehouse, and then the oppressor will be waiting for me when I come out. So that means I don't have a messy changeover in there, and I can also send my Sparrow back to storage so that it's ready for me if I need it, if something happens later on. So again, I've got all the best spawns, I've got all the best RNG, so this is just going to pop me straight by the beach. So I've got a really quick one here because of how close it is, and because I'm on the oppressor I don't need to bother with the cameras. I can just head in here and pick up the cloner and we're done. Now this is another difference with the world record speed runs. Now I don't know if this still works, but at the time when the records were set, what you would do is you would use a hanger glitch to go in and apply a little bit of a glitch to your character, which meant it would run faster in indoor areas. So that just shaves you maybe a couple of seconds off in here. Now you're probably figuring out that a couple of seconds really isn't going to save me the way we're going. So what we do now, head back over on the oppressor, and this is where it gets tricky because you have to be very, very careful how you park this. If you want to use your oppressor for these to do them quickly, you have to very carefully park it there and hope that that doesn't happen. So now hopefully that will be there when I come out. So there you can see that was a little bit closer. So that was only 20 seconds. I can't believe I'm saying that. He was only 20 seconds faster than me on that prep. So let's move on to the next one, which is the plasma cutter. Now this is where pulling the oppressor out was going to save me time, because for a couple of these plasma cutter missions, the now very wet oppressor. So let's go back and get my Sparrow. For a couple of these plasma cutter missions, you can save quite a lot of time using the oppressor over the Sparrow, which is why I wanted to go down the route of swapping the Sparrow for the oppressor after the cloner prep. Because for a couple of the cutter missions, what you can actually do, you can find, obviously you go over to the safe house first, you take the photo, that's easy. Then it will give you the location that the gang are at. What you can do, you can basically just barrel into there on the oppressor, throw a few missiles in there. It'll kill most of the people, enough to not be a problem. One of them will drop the plasma cutter, you can just fly over it and fly straight off. So there's a good easily a 30-second save in there, I would say, over using the Sparrow, which is why I wanted to do that. So now I've kind of screwed myself over by not landing my oppressor cleanly enough. And again, this is another theme. If you look at the footage side by side, you'll see that one thing that he's doing much better than me is landing quickly and cleanly. Now, every quick and clean landing saves you maybe only a handful of seconds, but let's say it's 10 seconds. There are quite a few missions. I think, I'm trying to remember now, I think there are probably around 6 missions in total to set up. So if you can save 10 seconds on each one by doing a clean landing, that's a minute off your speedrun time right there. These are all the things that are adding up for his version of the heist preps. So taking the photo is easy. I'm sure you all know, you just walk in, take a photo of the room and walk forward a bit and step out. You don't need to actually try and find the board. And this is where it becomes problematic, because obviously now I've got my Sparrow stuck and I still can't get my oppressor because I've only just destroyed it and I need to wait for the cooldown.
You're not very good at this, are you?
So my only option now, after I've had a bit of a thing, is to go and get a buzzard. Basically because I know the buzzard will spawn quite close by, nearly as fast as the Sparrow, but it does have the cooldown on the missions, so it's not going to be as good as either the Sparrow or the oppressor would be for this, but do you know what, it's gonna have to do. So all in all, it's not going well, which is a problem, because when I started this, my original aim was to get an entry on the speedrun board. Obviously for my category, there's no way I'm going to get anywhere near the world records, but I thought if I filter it down by PS5, surely I should be able to get on there. So my target is to get on that speedrun board and not to be last. So while you're watching this, why don't you let me know in the comments if you think I'm going to achieve that based on what we've done so far. So here I arrive at the plasma cutter stealing mission in the wrong vehicle. Not even in the second choice, I'm in the third choice vehicle to do this mission in. So I've parked a little bit of a way away because on this mission people do that. And as well as that, the guys who've got the plasma cutter tend to fly around in the cars, and if you park straight opposite, they'll tend to run into it and you can end up blowing up your own escape transport. So run into here, grab this. This is slightly trickier on the oppressor because it can be difficult to get in and out, but you can still basically throw a couple of rockets in there, ride in on your oppressor, pick the plasma cutter up and escape. So huge time saving over what I'm doing, but this is going to have to do for now. And obviously, as I take off here, you'll probably be aware the only helicopter that can actually land in the Kasatka is the Sparrow. So I'm going to have to dump this one and swim because I don't want to risk blowing it and myself up by crashing it into the sub. So this is going to be a fairly significant time loss. We're looking at least 30 seconds, maybe close to 40 by the time we're in. Out we get. Swim across, try and miss the helicopter. And there we go. That's another prep done. And that's over a minute slower. So what you're seeing unfold here is a slight gulf between expectation and reality. Now I've done this heist probably hundreds of times. I know my way around it. This is not the best attempt I've ever had, but this is me trying to do it really rather quickly. Now the interaction menu issue didn't help Neither did forgetting that my Sparrow hadn't been recalled, so I had to recall it back. And we're going to go off and do the construction site. Now again, if I hadn't have destroyed my oppressor, this would have been a perfect mission for the oppressor, because you can just park it on the front of the sub, you can fly over, and depending on which one you get, you can save a huge amount of time based on where you can land it and how quickly you can get the cutter. So at least I got my Sparrow back, so that at least means I'm in my second choice vehicle. And again, RNG is on my side, which, I'll be honest, at this point that's actually becoming quite annoying, because it would be lovely to be able to blame it for the issues with this run, shall we say, but it's perfect. I got 707 Vespucci, I've got this site for the cutting torch, I'm getting all the best spawn, so I have nothing to complain about. So over here, one thing that's always worth remembering is this is easier with the hat on. If you're not doing the just blasting straight through on the oppressor, always put the hat on. For some reason I always need to run up to it twice. Now this doesn't make you invisible, it just makes you invisible for a short amount of time, so they don't spot you straight away. So you can't just run through and do whatever you like, you can't bump into anyone, even the construction workers. If you knock one of those over, they'll still get cross, but it kind of gives you a little bit of a grace period. You've got about sort of 5 seconds or so that you can be in their eye line and they won't see you. So it just makes it an awful lot easier. It only takes a few seconds to do. It's certainly not going to affect a speedrun this bad. So that's done. Back in the Sparrow. And let's get back to the Kasatka, because we're barreling through these missions now. We've probably only got one left. I've completely lost track of where I am. Now, one thing that I will say, I'm comparing my pace to a world record pace. Now I know he didn't submit this lap to the speedrun board, and I believe that's because he had some technical issues and he had to restart it and stitch them together. So I don't think they will ever accept a speedrun submission if you've stitched 2 clips of video together. So I'm guessing that's why it's not on there, but still I did watch the video and I'm absolutely happy that his time and all the preps were completely legit. And one thing I should also mention is, if you notice some glitching on the continuity on his footage in the top right, that's just because I had to trim a few sections out to make sure it all stitched together. So that's the cutting torch delivered, and I believe we might be on to the last prep. So again, RNG was kind, giving me Vinewood, which is one of the easier ones. I believe there is one that's closer, but still, it gave me a good spawn. And this was one where I was convinced that my technique was better. So, what a lot of people do, including Puarama, is they will fly over, spawn in the Phantom Wedge if you have one. If you don't have one, obviously you have to go and steal one, but if you're having to steal one, you're probably not going to be looking at speedrunning at the moment. This is a huge time save, so by having your own Phantom Wedge, you're saving at least 4 or 5 minutes on every single heist. So if you think about it, if you do this heist a lot, that'll pay for itself really rather quickly. But what a lot of people do is they will spawn that in, attach the trailer, drive away a short distance, jump out, kill themselves, job's a good one. Now, on occasion, it doesn't happen very often, maybe 2 times in 10 it will happen, that you can actually lose the cops naturally on your way to the long fin drop off point anyway. So what I tend to do, instead of killing myself at the start, I get the boat and then I will drop a pin so I know exactly where I'm going to drop it off. It's always the same place, so you can always drop it in the same place. It's just nice to have the map. But yeah, just call the phantom wedge in, connect up, drop the pin, and then head over there. Because on the off chance this happens to be one of the 2 times in 10 where you can actually lose the cops naturally on your way over there anyway, you save all of that time from not having killed yourself at the start of this mission. So let's see how that works out, because as you can see, I'm nearly caught up with him, or at least I would have caught up with him if I'd have reversed onto my trailer properly, which clearly I didn't, and then I got hung up on the wall. Just everything about this run is just awful. Now I am actually, now that I've edited this video, I'm actually going to have another go at this because I feel like I've learned so much from this. I think I can do a much better job of this. Now, while we drive over, this is a useful point to talk about some of the other, just say inverted commas, glitches that have been used to get the really ridiculously quick times that you've seen at the top of the speedrun board. So for example, for this mission there is a specific glitch on PC where you can steal the long fin, get out and get killed straight away, and that respawns you right down at the docks exactly where you need to deliver it, so that cuts out this entire section. Now that, as far as I know, has never worked on PC. As far as I know, has never worked on console, so that's never really been an option for us. And again, that's just another reason why I am quite intrigued by this concept of glitchless speedrunning, because it's open to everyone. Anyone that's got the game, if you just fancy having a go, you can record your session. As long as you do it in a single recording, anyone can have a go at this. Anyone can submit a time, and anyone can get a time on the speedrun board. So as you can see there, he's actually beat me already, and I haven't lost the cops yet, so what I'm going to have to do is my backup plan, which is if you don't lose the cops quite by the time you get to the dock, you just drive down to the end and they usually miss you. And I also missed my point to bash through the fence. Oh no, I didn't, I remembered. So you can just head right down to the end of the pier, and the cops will usually miss you. Now, as you'll see, that didn't really work, so I would have been, shall we say, significantly better off just getting out of the truck and killing myself like he did earlier on. So this is one change I'm definitely going to make to my run, because this, I'll be honest, it isn't normally this bad. Usually I can just run down to the end of the dock and they disappear, but I ended up running around the corner, and I think I ended up going a little bit further in a second as well because they were so bloody persistent today. Go on, go away, go away. There you go, they've gone. So that, along with job warping, are some of the glitches, and like I say, I'm using the word glitches quite loosely. In some ways they're not glitches, they're just features that have been used in a different way than they were intended, which I suppose is what a glitch is. But job warping is another one of those, and we'll come back to that in a second. So get back in the long fin and just drive it over that marker, and then we're done. So we're at 33 minutes 54, which, even considering all the issues I've had, is actually not a bad time for all of the prep missions. You know, 33 minutes, I'll take that. So at this point I'm thinking, do you know what, this is still a decent run. So from that one, I do a session change. I don't always do that for reasons I've said before. My connection is not brilliant, so sometimes changing sessions for me can take 20 seconds. So we're here. Time for the finale. Now, I will start this from the moment you see the boat for both of us. And this is another area where there was one bit where I swore that my route was faster. Now, you've probably seen a bit of a theme here. Every time I've said I could have sworn my route was faster, turns out it wasn't. And this is the point where, if you watch Poobarama's video, that's where he finished the whole thing. And I'm still going through the menus. Yeah. So as we start the finale, off we go, and I'm still not 100% sure I've spawned in the correct place here. I might have chosen the wrong place to start to get here, but anyway, this I'm sure you're all familiar, and wow, yeah, the game hates me today. I have never ever done that. In all the dozens or hundreds or however many Cayos I've done, I've never been just thrown out of the water like that. But anyway, we'll keep going, because we just need to go around this corner and get through the gate. So this is one of the areas where I had a genius idea of how much faster I could do this. And I'm slightly ahead. My God, again, I might be like 20 minutes down, but I'm a second ahead here, although he's made it up already. And that's with the access through the gate. Now, I've always believed that it's actually quicker to go slower. If you pull the trigger and just move the mouse slightly more slower, then you can do it in either 1 or 2 passes instead of 3, which I think is quicker. And because we were both at the gate at a very, very similar time, this will be a nice, good way to test that. And it looks like I was wrong about that too. So when it comes to going through the gate, it turns out that faster is in fact faster. Who would have thought it? Now, it is much of a muchness from here. We have a slightly different route through the compound, but I wasn't convinced there was any significance there because you have to wait for some of the guards anyway. But this would be a good point to talk about what I've learned. So where do I think the differences are? Well, it's interesting. Obviously, the interaction menu issue cost me quite a bit of time. I will work that out, and I'll put the figure up here for how much time I've worked out I lost through that interaction menu not working. Now, even if I take that out of the equation, if you look at the direct comparisons with the actual missions, you can see that he was significantly faster on the actual missions, but that still leaves a little bit in hand. And I think that little extra bit comes down to maybe 3 areas. The first of which is menuing. If you look at the sections where we're going through the menus, he's significantly faster than I am. And I mean a lot faster. Some of the menus that I'm taking 10, maybe 15 seconds to do, he's doing in 5. This section here, I was actually in hard mode, so I've got 4 fingerprints to do instead of 3. But I'm not even going to try and blame that for any amount of the difference between our 2 times, because that only took about an extra 15 seconds. And when you see at the end how far behind I actually was, 15 seconds is nothing. So, first thing, menuing. So much faster. Second thing is some of the aggressiveness of inputs, and by that I mean as soon as your character spawns in, get ready to move, know where you need to go. And the last thing, and the thing that was kind of surprising, was I think the bit that's missing was the order. because even when you factor in the faster mission times and the faster menuing, there's still a little bit on the table, and I think that is down to the order that he does the missions in compared to me. There is obviously some time saving in doing them in the correct order, or in a more optimized order, shall we say. So let's just get through this, and this is the easy bit. Surely this will go absolutely just fine, because I never burn myself doing this, ever. Obviously, apart from today, I've got to burn myself and slow myself down today, but at least it was right near the end. So we have the crappy tequila, which is the worst main target I could possibly have hoped for. Although there is a bonus in that, because I haven't done the Cayo Perico heist for a few weeks now. So the main target that you get is affected by how long it is since you last did it. So if it's more than 72 hours since you last did it, you have a higher chance of getting a target that isn't absolute dog crap. Now, it would have been nice to pick the keys up there. That would have saved me a little bit of time, but not much, because there isn't much time to be saved getting out of the compound anyway. And from here, this, when he finally remembers how to get through the door, and it never ceases to amaze me that he doesn't know how to get through the door yet, but that's a whole different video. This is one of the areas where you can make or lose the most time, probably in the entire heist. So you run up here, shoot that guy, take the bike. What I always used to do is nip down the side road and shoot the guy in the Jeep as well, just to make sure they didn't trigger the alarm, but you don't need to do that, you can just get away. Now, everyone knows the route here. You just head straight down here, straight off the bottom of the island, and that drops you right in the zone where you can swim straight to the 3 mines and get your getaway. Now, one thing that's important to do, if you ever find yourself landing awkwardly and you're not sure where you are, take the extra second to find out the right way to swim, because there are a couple of spots on the south of the island where you can just swim for just that amount of time. You can see the text already disappeared, so we're finished, and you can be off the island in a few seconds. If you miss one of those, you might have to swim for another 4 or 5 minutes before it recognises that you've finished. So this is one of the areas that can really ruin a perfectly good run. Obviously, I ruined my perfectly good run ages ago. So I said, this is the truth about speedrunning. What have I learned? Well, the first thing I've learned is that it is a lot harder than you think. It's really easy to look at people doing this and think,
That's easy!
so easy. I mean, look at there, the times. He did a 35, I did a 42. So for my first go, I'm quite happy to be within 7 minutes of his time, especially when I've identified so many areas that I can pull in on. But did I get on the lap board? Well, there you go. My target was not to be last, and I'm not last, I suppose. I'm next to last, but that was my target. Get on the speedrunning board and don't be last, so I suppose I've kind of hit my target. Can't say I'm happy with that though. So I'm definitely going to be having another go. It will definitely be a much shorter video. I'll definitely keep you updated with the progress on how I do it, refining this a little bit. I'm going to go through and just see where so much time was to be saved. So again, big shout out to Booberama for raising this in the first place. I'm loving the idea of glitch-free speedruns. I thought his videos were excellent. He's a brilliant YouTuber, really super regular. You should absolutely check him out. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.